The air was cold on planet Varelia. The sky was a deep purple, filled with strange stars and distant lights. Tall buildings made of crystal stood all around like towers of ice. This was the home of the Varelians, a proud alien race, cold and powerful. In the center of the main hall stood a human alone. His name was Jack. He had been captured from Earth during a secret mission. Now he was a prisoner, surrounded by creatures who saw him as weak and simple. Across the hall, the tall doors opened. A woman walked in. She was not human, but her form looked close enough. Her name was Commander Zyra, leader of the Varelian guards. Her skin had a silver glow, her eyes sharp and glowing blue. Her voice was calm, but filled with pride and coldness. "So, this is the human everyone is talking about," she said with a smile. She circled Jack. Slowly, like a hunter watching prey, Jack didn't move, didn't speak. He just looked at her with quiet eyes. Zyra laughed, her voice echoing through the chamber. "You look so soft," she said. "Your kind is emotional, loud, always talking about love and dreams." Then she leaned closer and whispered so everyone could hear. "A human can never satisfy me," she said. "You are too weak," the alien guards laughed. But Jack didn't. He stood straight, his face calm, not angry, not scared. Zyra raised an eyebrow, surprised by his silence. "Nothing to say?" she asked. Jack looked her in the eye and said, "You have no idea what a human is capable of." The room went quiet. Zyra frowned. This was not the answer she expected. She thought he would beg or cry or try to escape. Instead, he challenged her with just a few words. "Take him to my chambers," Zyra ordered. The guards were shocked, but Commander one of them started. "I want to study him myself," she said coldly, "and maybe have some fun." Jack didn't resist as they led him away, but his mind was sharp. His eyes were watching everything. He knew he was being tested, mocked, maybe even played with, but he also knew something else. He had already planted doubt in Zyra's mind, inside Zyra's private chamber. The lights were soft and strange. Alien machines hummed quietly in the background. Zyra stood by a table watching Jack as he sat calmly. "You act brave," she said. "But you are still human." Jack gave a small smile. "And you are still curious," he replied. Zyra didn't like that answer. She felt something new. Confusion. Why did this human speak like he wasn't afraid? Why did his words make her feel something? She walked up to him and tried again to make him react. "You think you can impress me?" she asked. Jack shrugged. "I'm not here to impress you," he said. "I'm just being myself." Zyra stared at him, unsure of what to say. No human had ever dared to speak like this in front of her. This was not what she expected, and for the first time in many years she felt something strange inside. Not fear, not anger, something else. Something she didn't understand yet. "I've seen many species," Jack said slowly, "but I've never seen someone so powerful. And so alone." Zyra's eyes narrowed. She turned away, hiding her face. "You don't know anything about me," she said. "Maybe," Jack replied. "But I can see it in your eyes." She felt a sudden wave of emotion but quickly pushed it down. "I control this game," she said sharply. "Of course you do," Jack answered, "for now." Zyra walked to the far side of the room, thinking. This human was dangerous in a different way, not because of weapons, not because of strength, but because he saw things, felt things, and made others feel them too. She looked back at him. He was just sitting there, watching her, not angry, not scared, just waiting. And that made her heart beat just a little faster. The alien who once mocked him now felt something strange, something close to fear, and it was just the beginning. Asterisk. The door closed behind them with a soft hiss. Zyra stood in silence, staring at the human now sitting in her chamber. No chains, no weapons, no guards, just one human and one alien, alone in a quiet room. Most prisoners beg, cry, or try to escape. But this one sat calmly, like he was exactly where he wanted to be. That alone made Zyra uneasy. "This is not a prison cell," she said finally. Jack looked around and nodded. "Nice place for someone who doesn't feel," he replied. Zyra blinked. "I feel," she snapped, Just not like your kind. Jack gave a small smile. That's the second time you've tried to tell me what humans are like, he said. You might be a commander, but you're a poor judge of people. Zyra crossed her arms. Her silver skin catching the soft blue lights of the room, she walked slowly toward Jack, like a cat testing its prey. Then teach me, she said, her voice sharp. Teach me what I've missed. Her words were meant to mock, but deep inside, something else stirred. Curiosity, maybe even hunger. Jack stood up. Face to face with the alien who claimed no human could satisfy her. I'm not here to teach, he said calmly. But you'll learn anyway. Zyra turned away quickly, hiding a sudden heat rising in her chest. This was supposed to be a game. She was supposed to be in control. But Jack wasn't following the rules, and that made the game dangerous. She clapped. Her hands and the wall shimmered. A table rose from the floor, glowing with alien lights and strange floating images. Zyra tapped it once, and the display showed Earth. She spun it slowly with her finger, like it was a toy. Your planet, she said coldly. So green, so loud, so full of weak emotion. Jack stepped closer. You call it weak because you've never felt it, he said. Love, loss, sacrifice, things worth fighting for. Zyra laughed softly, but it didn't reach her eyes. I've fought in 20 wars, she said. Killed creatures older than your planet. Jack looked at her. And yet, he said, here you are, trying to understand a single human. Zyra paused. Something about that sentence hit her in a strange place. She shut off the display and sat down across from him. You're trying to play with my mind, she said. Jack shook his head. No, he said softly. I'm just showing you what you're missing. A long silence followed, even the machines. In the room seemed to quiet down. Zyra looked at Jack differently now. Not as prey, not as a test subject, but as a mirror. And what she saw in that mirror was something she hadn't felt in years. Loneliness, curiosity, and the hunger for something real. She broke the silence. Tell me a human story, she said suddenly. Something emotional, something weak. Jack smiled and began to speak. He told her about a soldier on Earth, a man who gave up his life to save strangers, not for glory, not for power, but because he couldn't stand to see innocent people die. As the story went on, Zyra sat. Quietly, her usual smirk faded. She listened not with her ears, but with something deeper, something she didn't want to name. When the story ended, she looked at Jack. Why would someone do that? She asked. To die for people he didn't even know? Because that's what makes us human, Jack answered. We don't always choose logic. Sometimes we choose love. Zyra stood up quickly. I've heard enough, she said, turning her back. But her voice was not steady. Her hands shook. Slightly, though she hid them well. Jack leaned back in his chair. He didn't say another word. He had already won the first round, and Zyra, who once laughed at the weakness of humans, now felt something she couldn't laugh at, a crack in her armor, a question in her mind, and a feeling in her chest she didn't understand. The mirror in Zyra's room flickered, showing her reflection. But she didn't recognize the face staring back, silver skin, glowing eyes, sharp jaw. It was still her, but something inside had changed. She leaned closer, staring into her own eyes. Why did one human story make her feel this way? Why did his voice stay in her mind like a song she couldn't forget? For the first time in years, Zyra asked herself a question she feared. Am I broken? She turned away from the mirror. Emotions were not allowed on Varelia. They were signs of weakness, signs of failure. But since the human arrived, everything had started to shift. Zyra entered the control room, her boots echoing across the floor. Her guards stood tall, their eyes watching her, but she ignored them. Her mind was somewhere else, still trapped in the story of the human soldier. Meanwhile, in his chamber, Jack sat quietly. He had not asked for food, water, or rest. He simply waited. His silence was louder than any scream. Zyra walked in, trying to act normal, but the air between them had changed. It was no longer predator and prey. It was something else, something undefined. Why are you so calm? She asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Jack looked up. Because I'm not afraid of you, he said simply. Zyra stepped closer, her hands behind her back. She needed control, needed the upper hand. But her voice trembled just slightly when she said, "You should be." Jack tilted his head. "But I'm not," he said. "And you're not as sure of yourself as you pretend." Zyra's eyes narrowed. She turned on a hologram. It showed Earth cities burning in past wars. "Look at your world," she said. "So fragile. Always fighting. Always breaking." Jack stood up slowly. "Yes," he said. "But we also rebuild. We break. Then we rise again. Stronger. Can you say the same for your people?" Zyra's lips parted, but no answer came. He was right. And it hurt more than she expected that night. Zyra stood alone on her balcony. The stars above her looked the same, but she felt different. She remembered being young, curious, bold, full of questions. But the military crushed that version of her, turned her into a cold leader, a perfect soldier. Until now, the next morning, something even stranger happened. Jack was sitting with one of her guards, a tall, quiet alien named Sorik. They were talking, laughing even. Zyra watched from the shadows, her own soldier, smiling with a human. She stormed in, her voice loud. "Sorik, outside, now." The guard stood at once and left the room. Zyra turned to Jack. "What did you say to him?" "Listened," Jack said. Zyra stared. "That's all?" Jack nodded. "Sometimes people don't need orders. They just need someone to care." Those words hit her harder than a blade. Zyra had never cared, not because she was cruel, but because she had forgotten how. Later that evening, Zyra called. For Jack again, she didn't know why. Maybe to argue, maybe to understand. He entered her chamber. Quiet as always, she looked at him and asked, "Why are you really here, Jack?" He walked toward the window, looking out at her world. "I was sent to gather intel," he said, "but I found something more valuable." Zyra raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" Jack turned to her and said, "You." Silence fell like a storm. Zyra's heart jumped. She had no words. Only heat in her chest and confusion in her mind. She stepped closer, her eyes locked with his. The air was thick with something dangerous, not anger, something warmer, something real. For a moment, their faces were just inches apart. Zyra's lips parted, but then she stopped. Her mind screamed, "This can't happen. Not with a human, not with him." She pulled back quickly. "Leave," she said coldly. Now Jack didn't protest. He turned and walked away. But as he left, he said quietly, "You felt it too." The door shut behind him. Zyra stood frozen, eyes wide, breath uneven. She had mocked humans, laughed at them. Now she was trembling, and that was the first crack. Zyra didn't sleep that night. She sat in silence, staring at the dark ceiling above. Her heart, something she had long ignored, was making noise again. Not with words, but with feelings she couldn't control. Jack's voice echoed in her head. "You felt it too." It was a whisper. But it hit like thunder. She stood up and paced the room. She had faced monsters, machines, and storms that could tear cities apart. But she had never faced her own heart, far. Across the base, Jack sat quietly in his cell. He wasn't thinking about escape. He was thinking about Zyra, not the commander, not the alien, but the woman behind the armor. He had seen the change, not big, not loud, but real. He knew the moment was close, not for escape, but for choice. In the high tower of Varelian command, alarms began to flash. A message had arrived from the council. It was short, cold, and final. Terminate the human immediately. Zyra has been compromised. Zyra stood frozen as she read the order. Compromised. That word stung more than a blade. Her fingers trembled. She had followed every command, won every war. And now, because she felt something, she was broken in their eyes. She stared at the screen, then at the door, then at her own hands. They had destroyed cities, ended lives. But now? They wanted to protect. She rushed to the cell block, her boots loud against the metal floors. Jack looked up as she entered. He could see it on her face. Something had changed, something urgent. "They're coming for you," she said, her voice low. "Who?" Jack asked. "My own people," she whispered. "They think I'm weak. Jack stood up. Are you? He asked gently. Zyra looked at him for a long moment, then shook her head. No, she said, not anymore. She pulled a small device from her pocket and pressed it. The cell door opened with a soft hum. Jack stepped out for the first time. They stood side by side, not as prisoner and guard, but as something more. Where do we go? Jack asked. Zyra looked toward the outer gates. There's a shuttle in the West Bay, she said. But we'll need to fight our way through. Jack smiled. I've waited days to stretch my legs. As they moved through the halls, lights flashed red, doors locked, sirens rang. Guards appeared, not with questions, but with weapons. Zyra moved fast, her body a blur of silver and strength. Jack followed close, using cover, stealing a weapon from a stunned soldier. Together, they fought alien and human, one with training, one with instinct, but both with purpose and something more. When they reached the shuttle bay, 4 guards stood between them and freedom. Zyra hesitated. One of the guards was Sorik, the one who had smiled with Jack. She raised her weapon, but he didn't move. He looked at Zyra, then at Jack, then he slowly lowered his gun. Sorik gave a small nod. You're not the only one who's been watching him, he said. Maybe we all needed to feel something. The shuttle roared to life. Zyra took the pilot seat. Jack sat beside her, watching as the base grew smaller. Behind them, as they entered the clouds above the planet, Jack looked at her and asked, Why did you save me? Zyra didn't answer right away. She stared into the stars and whispered, Because when I saw them trying to kill you, I realized I didn't want a world without you in it. Jack reached for her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. The turning point had come, not in war, not in battle, but in a moment of choice, and Zyra, the alien who once laughed at human feelings, had chosen to feel. The stars stretched like rivers of light outside the shuttle window. Zyra's hands stayed firm on the controls, but her mind drifted behind her. Betrayal, fire, alarms, died. Beside her, a human who had changed everything. Jack looked at her. In the soft glow of the cockpit, you've done something brave, he said. Zyra didn't answer. Bravery wasn't what she felt. It was something deeper. Stranger and warmer, they broke through the upper clouds of Varelia. The planet behind them looked beautiful but cold. It was no longer her home, not after what she had done. Suddenly a loud beep filled the cabin. Zyra checked the screen, her eyes narrowing. Pursuit drones. She said, They've launched 3, maybe 4. Jack leaned forward. Can we outrun them? Zyra paused, then shook her head. Not in this old model. We'll have to land and hide. She pulled the shuttle into a steep dive. The engine screamed. The ship shook. Jack grabbed the side rail but didn't panic, not because he trusted the ship, but because he trusted her. They crash-landed on a small moon near the Varelian border. Rocks, red sand, and silence greeted them. The shuttle was damaged, but they were alive. Smoke rose from the engines. Jack stepped out first, the air thin but breathable. Zyra followed. Blinking against the sunlight, she had never felt so out of place, and yet so free. They walked across the dry landscape, searching for cover. Zyra moved like a trained soldier. Jack followed, watching her, not just her body, but her silence, her pain. He saw something breaking inside her, and something beautiful growing in its place. They found shelter in a shallow cave. Zyra sat down. Exhausted, Jack sat across from her. He looked at her hands, once deadly, now shaking. He reached over and gently held them. You don't have to pretend with me, he said. Zyra looked up, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know who I am anymore, Jack smiled. Maybe that's a good thing. Night came quickly on the moon. The sky turned deep blue, stars burning brighter than ever. They shared a small energy pack. Barely enough food for one, but neither complained, for the first time. Silence between them felt safe. Zyra leaned her head against the rock wall. Her eyes drifted to Jack, who was now lying on the ground beside her, wounded, tired, human, and still fighting. She didn't understand how someone so breakable could be so strong. I used to laugh at your kind, she said quietly. Jack opened one eye. I remember, She gave a weak smile. Now I'm wondering if I was just afraid he didn't speak. Just reached out and touched her fingers again, and this time she held on, but the peace didn't last. A sharp noise echoed from the cave mouth. Zira jumped to her feet. Weapon. Drones. The council had found them. Stay behind me, she said, stepping into the light. But Jack came beside her. Not this time, he said. We fight together. The first drone dropped low. Scanning the rocks, Zira aimed, fired a direct hit. The second circled above, targeting Jack. He rolled to the side and shot with a stolen alien blaster. Sparks flew. It crashed into the sand. But the third drone fired a pulse beam. It hit Jack in the side, throwing him back against the cave wall. Zira screamed, rage exploding inside her. In one motion, she leapt forward. Destroyed the last drone, then ran to him. He was breathing, but barely. Blood on his side, eyes half open. Zira knelt beside him, hands shaking. You're going too. Be okay, she whispered. You have to be. Jack gave her a faint smile. You feel that? He said weakly. Zira nodded. Yes, she said, and I don't want it to stop. That night, Zira didn't sleep. She stayed by his side, guarding him like he once guarded her. And for the first time in her life, she prayed not to a god. Not to a system, but to the universe, to keep him alive. Because now, she wasn't just escaping the drones, she was escaping who she used to be. And the farther she ran from that old self, the closer she got to something real. Zira had been trained to fight, to lead, to win. To follow orders without asking why, but no one had trained her for this, for fear, not of death, but of losing him. Jack was fading. His breath came slow, his body still. Zira's hands pressed. Against the wound, alien tech wrapped around him like glowing vines. But it wasn't enough. I need to get help, she whispered, but they were alone on a dead moon. No allies, no ship, just hope, and even that was starting to run dry. Still, she refused to let go. She sat beside him, night after night, keeping him warm, whispering stories, not of war, but of herself. Of the time she saw a star being born, of the first time she tasted Earth's air, of how she used to dream. Before she learned to obey, she didn't know if he could hear her, but she kept talking. Because silence meant giving up, and humans never gave up. At least that's what Jack had taught her on the third night. The sand began to shift. Zira stood. Weapon ready, her heart already aching. But it wasn't a drone. It was a scavenger ship. Crew of alien traders passing through the system. They landed near the wreckage. Curious, cautious, Zira stepped forward. Unarmed. I need help, she said. He's injured, the captain. A reptilian being with gold eyes looked at her. You're Varelian, he said. Why should we help you? Zira did something she had never done before. She bowed her head. Because I'm not that person anymore, she said. And because he made me better, the crew took them aboard. Jack was placed in a healing pod. Zira waited outside, pacing. Fists clenched. Time felt heavy. Every second was war inside her chest. Finally, the door slid open. He's stable, the medic said. Zira didn't speak. She just walked in and sat beside him. Jack opened his eyes slowly. You're still here, he whispered. Zira smiled for the first time, not out of pride, but out of pure, simple relief. Where else would I be? She said. Jack reached for her hand. I thought. I lost you. You almost did, Zira replied. But I wasn't ready to lose you. That moment was quiet, but powerful. More powerful than laser fire or warships, because something had shifted. Zira, once feared by armies, now found strength. In something fragile, love, they traveled with the scavengers for days. Jack healed slowly. Zira trained, studied, and spoke with other travelers. She asked questions, real questions, not about strategy, but about people, memories, hearts. She started to see the galaxy not as a battlefield, but as a story, and she wanted to write her own ending. Then the message came, intercepted by the scavenger ship. Signal from the Varelian Council. A bounty had been placed on Zira's name, on Jack's. Wanted, dead or alive, they're afraid. Jack said as he read it. Zyra nodded. Good, she replied. Fear is a sign of weakness. But Jack looked at her and said something different. No, he said. It means they know we're strong. Zyra stood at the center of the ship, her eyes on the stars. She was no longer a tool of the Empire. She was something new. Something dangerous, not because she could kill, but because she could feel. With that feeling came clarity. She would no longer run. She would no longer hide. She would face the Empire, not for revenge, but to show them the truth. That the real power was not in fear or fire. It was in the heart, and in the human who gave hers a reason to beat again. The Varelian sky was darker than ever. Clouds of war gathered above the great citadel. Ships filled the air like metal birds ready to strike, and deep inside the heart of the Empire. The council waited, calm, cold, and certain that Zyra would crawl back in shame. They were wrong. A shuttle broke through the atmosphere. Small, silent, and steady. It landed at the edge of the main platform. The doors opened with a hiss. Zyra stepped out. She wore no helmet, no badge, no armor. Only her truth. And behind her, Jack, he was still healing, but his presence was stronger than ever, his steps slow but steady, his eyes clear and together. They walked into the lion's den, inside the grand chamber. The alien council stared from their tall thrones, their faces unreadable. One of them stood, Zyra. Once a commander, now a traitor, another spoke. You return with the human who poisoned your mind. Zyra stepped forward. No, she said calmly. I return with the human who opened my eyes. A murmur swept through the room. The head counselor narrowed his eyes. You disgrace your name. I gave my name to a system that knows nothing of life, she answered. You call emotion weakness, but it was your coldness that made me blind. They pointed at Jack. Execute the human, and we may forgive you. Zyra's laugh was soft, but sharp. You still think I serve you, she said. Let me show you what I serve now. She tapped a small device on her wrist. The walls lit up. Screens flickered to life. Every monitor showed different scenes. Varelian, citizens, guards, and officers watching, listening. Her words now broadcast across the Empire. I was your strongest soldier, Zyra said to the cameras. I won your wars, followed your orders, but you never gave me a reason to feel. To live, she looked at Jack. Then I met a human, and he didn't fight with lasers or fear. He fought with heart, and he won. The chamber exploded with voices, some angry, some confused, but others silent because they were thinking. For the first time, really thinking. The council moved to arrest them. Guards stepped forward, weapons drawn. Zyra didn't flinch. And then something incredible happened. One by one, the guards lowered their weapons. First one, then 3, then 10. They had heard enough. They had felt enough. The head counselor growled. This is mutiny. No, Zyra said. Stepping onto the central platform, this is evolution. She looked at Jack. He nodded. It was time. Zyra uploaded the last file, a recording of council lies, hidden missions, silent executions, manipulation of history. The truth spread like wildfire. And in moments, the Empire cracked. Outside, citizens gathered. Some cried, some cheered. And in the center of it all, an alien woman and a human man. Standing side by side, Zyra turned to Jack. You once said I had no idea what a human was capable of. He smiled. Now you know. She stepped forward. To the cameras, one last time, and for those who still believe a human could never satisfy a Varelian, she paused. Reached for Jack's hand. Let me be your proof. The chamber fell into silence, not from fear, but from awe. The story of Zyra and Jack spread across the stars, told in whispers, songs. In history books, an alien who mocked, a human who listened, and a love that broke through the walls of a cold empire. Zyra once laughed at the idea of human strength. Now she stood as its greatest witness, and the empire that once feared emotion had no choice but to feel. In the end, they didn't just escape, they changed the galaxy, and as they stood on the edge of a new world, Zyra whispered in Jack's ear, with you, I found everything I was told didn't exist. Jack smiled. Pulling her closer, "You've got the last laugh now," and she did.